How many of you like to eat salmon? How many of you have seen the southern residential orcapods or would like to sometime in your near future? Now, what if I told you that that was all at risk? In 1972, the Marine Mammal Protection Act was put in place to protect endangered marine mammals. So one of the mammals that it was put in protection was the southern residential killer whales. Well, this Protection Act not only protected endangered species, but also species that weren't endangered. This allowed the pinniped populations of the West Coast to grow exponentially. And in doing so, this affects the salmon population and the southern residential orcapods. According to the Salish Sea Marine Survival Project, the marine survival of Salish sea chinook, coho, and steelhead has declined up to a tenfold since the 1980s and has remained low. It has come to my knowledge that without the controlling of pinniped predation, our salmon and orca populations could be at risk. First, we will talk about the main pinnipeds that are causing the most damage. That would be the harbor seals and the California sea lion, which is not a native species to the Pacific Northwest. The California sea lion population fluctuates somewhere between 200 and 300,000, stemming from just 10,000 in the 1950s. And harbor seal populations are currently estimated around 100,000, according to a study by NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Throughout the year, the diet of the California sea lion varies, with their main food source being the Pacific herring. And when migrating from September to April, they feed on salmon stocks, mainly the chinook and chum. Well, back in the day, the problem with the California sea lion is they accredited the loss of the whole Lake Washington steelhead run to be depopulated. They credited the whole depopulation of that steelhead species in Lake Washington to 4 to 5 California sea lions, which one of them name was Herschel, another one was Hondo, and the other one was Big Frank. The main diet of harbor seals consists of herring, and from September to April, they eat juvenile salmonids, with the whole population consuming nearly 1.5 million a day. The issue with the California sea lions is they eat not only the males, but after they fool, they start to snack on the females and just eat the bellies. The problem with this is each female carries from 5 to 10,000 eggs, which, that's a big number of fish, especially when 1.5 million are eaten a day on outmigration by harbor seals. Sea lions and seals lower the population in not one, but two ways. First, they compete with the salmon over their main food source, which is the Pacific herring, and being the apex predator, they obviously out-eat the salmon, as well as the harbor seals eat the juvenile salmon on outmigration, and the northern stellar sea lions and California sea lions catch them on the way back from their adulthood going into spawning. With the decrease of primary food source and the predation of seals and sea lions, it leaves the salmon population at a risk of depopulation. So next we will be discussing the endangered southern residential orcapods, the J, K, and L pods, which have only been being monitored since 1973, starting with 66 orcas. According to a NOAA database on marine mammal stocks, the highest there were 99 whales in 1995, then declined to 79 whales in 2001, and as of 2017, there's 77 whales. J-Pod has 22 K-pod has 17, and L-pod has 32, with one breeding male who is nomadic, who goes from pod to pod. The effects of the competing trade-offs between marine mammals is an area that has just begun being studied over the last few years. Chinook salmon are the main food source for the southern residential orca population, so you can only imagine what would occur with the loss of the salmon. Orcas eat more salmon per biomass, but due to a higher population of pinnipeds, they eat more salmon in overall total numbers. The effects of competing trade-offs, or if we do not address this issue, we can continue to see whales become malnourished, and younglings will have a more difficult time competing with the adults and the pinnipeds. According to a study conducted by Brandon Chasko, it states, our results suggest that at least in recent years, competition with other marine mammals is a more important factor limiting the growth of this endangered population than competition with human fisheries. After talking about some of those, we will talk about some solutions. So we talked about how pinnipeds affect the orcas and how they affect the salmon. One solution, we could revisit the Marine Mammal Protection Act and change vague wording, as well as remove species that have had a population boom since the start of the act. Pinnipeds were not endangered when the act was put in place. It was removed. If we remove the protection from certain species that have overpopulated non-indigenous areas, then we can better manage the issue. With the removal of the Protection Act, we could allow state officials and tribal officials to remove pinnipeds from habitats such as Puget Sound and the Juan de Fuca, or the Strait of Juan de Fuca, as well as giving out certain amounts of permits to hunters and trappers to dispose of each year of the Columbia River. I know we have been focused on pinniped predation, but that is not the only factor that plays a role. According to Mike Mahavlich, he states that storms, water conditions, and habitat destruction can affect a population from year to year. In our meeting, we discussed how the rain from the past few weeks was so bad, they released a dam which caused the river to reach above 10,000 CFS, which is the measurement of speed and volume of waterways. This causes the riverbank to flood, causing the eggs to scatter, which will affect the salmon runs from 3 to 4 years from now. If we do not take a stand and tackle this problem of pinniped predation, we could lose not only another species of salmon, but also our beloved southern residential orcapods. Imagine a generation of children who will not have salmon in their rivers and not have orcas in their sea. That is not something I'd like to imagine.